Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines this past week. After months of speculation about his future, former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney launched his campaign to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader on Thursday with a promise to build the fastest growing economy in the G7 if he's elected. He adds, "It's no time for politics as usual."
The system, it's not working as it should. And it's not working as it could. People are anxious. No wonder. Too many are falling behind. Too many young people can't afford a home. Too many people can't find a doctor. And then we're living through the two biggest technological revolutions since they split the atom. And our climate is changing in ways that threatens livelihoods from Fort Mac to Fort Smith. And then on top of that, as George just mentioned, in just 4 days, the United States will swear in Donald Trump as their 47th president, a man who threatens economic force on his closest, most steadfast allies, including Canada. No.
Continuing his just like Justin stance, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is speaking out about Canada's head banker. In a post on X, Poilievre says, quote, "Carbon tax Carney is the ultimate Liberal insider. He's the chair of Trudeau's task force on economic growth and advised the Liberal government for years before that. And he now campaigns for the same Liberal policies that tax your work, double housing costs, and will hike the carbon tax to 61 cents per litre, just like Justin." And adding to the roster, former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says she'll be competing to replace Justin Trudeau as the Liberal leader and Prime Minister. The Toronto MP, originally from Peace River in northwestern Alberta, says on social media she's running to, quote, "fight for Canada." Freeland says her campaign's official launch will be Sunday. One of her main policy planks is rumored to be scrapping the carbon tax. Freeland had previously defended the controversial tax during her time in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. In a post shared on X on Wednesday, Freeland addressed registered Liberals, saying she is grateful for the chance to hear from you and listen to your ideas, and that she will have much more to say very soon. Former BC Premier Christy Clark has decided not to seek the federal Liberal leadership. In a note to supporters, Clark says there's not enough time for her to mount a successful campaign and renew the party. Clark's announcement comes just days after she was forced to backtrack from her claim during a CBC interview that she was never a member of the Conservative Party. Liberal candidates face a fast-approaching cutoff date of January 27th to sign up for the race. On Monday, Federal Transport Minister Anita Anand announced she would also not be joining the race. Could the Liberal leadership race signal giving the carbon tax a second thought? According to Chris Sims, the Alberta director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the leadership candidates could face challenges while campaigning amid a looming carbon tax hike that will take effect on April the 1st.
Now we're really waiting for the two what are considered big contenders. We're waiting for Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and former governor of the Bank of England and longtime friend of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're waiting to see what he says, because he's been a big fan of the carbon tax for years. It's all through his articles. He's given speeches on it. It's in his books. But when they're staring down the barrel of an election happening soon, and they've got a carbon tax that they're going to jack up on everyone starting April 1st. Can you imagine campaigning on that? So they've got a big choice here. They've got about 70% of Canadians who oppose having the carbon tax hiked up. Are they really going to campaign on that? So that's why we're really asking this question to all Liberal candidates. Will you scrap the carbon tax? Yes or no? And if you say yes, you'll scrap it. Are you going to just replace it with something else?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau slammed Alberta Premier Danielle Smith for breaking with Team Canada. He says all of the country's premiers, except for Smith, chose to put Canada first when it comes to the country's response to Donald Trump's threat to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. Smith refused to sign a joint statement with the other 12 premiers, saying she cannot agree to the federal government's response to Trump if Alberta energy exports could be part of that.
I would actually like to point out to Danielle Smith that Canadians know the importance of standing up for each other. That's why Canadian taxpayers bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, to be able to get Albertan oil to new markets. That was an investment that all Canadians made, that the Alberta government is making billions of dollars off of. That's an example of all Canadians standing up for Alberta and getting it done.
Smith responded on Facebook with a post titled, "How about this for building a Team Canada approach," which outlined some of her ideas that would protect Albertans and Canadians. Trudeau and Canada's provincial and territorial leaders had met in Ottawa Wednesday to discuss how to strengthen the country's ties to Americans at a time when Trump is threatening to impose a tariff. They also talked about retaliatory tariffs. Danielle Smith, who attended virtually, has said if the federal government imposes an export ban on Alberta oil going to the United States as a retaliatory measure against expected Trump tariffs, it would prompt a national unity crisis. In a statement, she says, Alberta will simply not agree to export tariffs on our energy or other products, nor do we support a ban on exports of these same products. We will take whatever actions are needed to protect the livelihoods of Albertans from such destructive federal policies. Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley also weighed in on the meeting with Trudeau and the premiers. He told BCN's Jeanette Rocher on Tuesday that the other premiers would likely gang up on Danielle Smith.
Danielle Smith is speaking up for her province, and she is saying, look, we want an exemption. We don't think there should be tariffs on oil. Now, that said, in her media availability after Mar-a-Lago on Monday morning, she was very blunt. We should all expect these tariffs to come in, and they're going to hit all of us. So that includes Alberta oil, but she doesn't want it on there. That message is being seen as not being a team player among some other premiers and business leaders, because there is the possibility, because of how much oil that the Americans import from Canada, there is the possibility that there could be a carve out for that. Well, if there's a carve out for that, why not auto parts? Why not softwood lumber? Why not something else? And so if we're all going to get hit, the feeling is that we should all work together. Now, Premier Smith rightly feels that, okay, look, we've got a government in Ottawa that has been doing everything in its power to undermine the oil and gas sector. I mean, they shut down Energy East. They stopped Northern Gateway Pipeline. They have stopped other export avenues for Alberta oil and gas, or Saskatchewan oil and gas, or, to an even more limited degree from Manitoba. So all of this is being shut down. And now you want to use Alberta oil and gas as a leveraging chip? Excuse me. Why is it suddenly a great industry now when you need it to fight back against Trump tariffs? But before that, the Trudeau Liberals were trying to shut it down with emissions caps, production caps, everything else, the Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill. So I understand where she's coming from, but if you're sitting out here, you can also look at where other premiers are coming from and say, all right, are we fighting as a team or are we not? Both sides have valid arguments.
Meantime, while speaking to Canadians in Delta, British Columbia, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says U.S. President-elect Donald Trump should be thanking Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for handing him leverage to threaten Canada with steep tariffs.
I think the first thing President Trump will do when he takes office is to send a bouquet of flowers to the Liberals of Freeland, Carney, and Trudeau, who have weakened and divided our country and given him the upper hand. The Liberals have forced Canadians to sell 100% of our oil and gas to the Americans at discount prices, which has put us in this position of weakness. It'd be nice if we had pipelines and export terminals that could take our energy to Asia and Europe without going through the United States.
And the proposed U.S. tariffs stand to impact our country's GDP and further aggravate Canada's skyrocketing stagflation. That is according to Stephen Johnston, director at Omnigens Asset Management. He sat down with me to explain stagflation and highlight Canadian industries that will actually thrive amid the tariffs. Last time we had you on our show, we chatted about stagflation. How will Trump's 25% tariffs affect Canada's stagflationary macroeconomic conditions?
Well, unfortunately, they're going to make it a lot worse, right? And if you think about it, at its core, Canada's stagflation problem arises from the fact that we don't make sufficient investments in productive capital, right? The capital tends to leave the country. We tend to have a structurally weak currency, and we tend to have a structurally weak economy. Well, if you think about the proposed tariffs, our biggest export market is the United States. So what's that going to do? It's going to put more pressure on the economy, just on an absolute basis. It's going to put more pressure on the Canadian dollar. And of course, it's going to make Canada a less interesting place for foreign capital because they'll be concerned about the effects of tariffs. So in practice, we have very problematic stagflationary macroeconomic conditions, and the tariffs are going to make it worse, much worse.
Wow. And then there are some industries and investments that will benefit or look to benefit from these tariffs. Which ones are we talking about here?
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, the tariffs contributing to stagflation, and so are there industries that can flourish during stagflation? And of course, the answer is yes, right? Because what is stagflation? Stagflation is pressure on the middle class, increasing inflation, and below-trend growth. And so there are industries, regardless of those conditions in Canada, that still experience actually good growth rates. And I'll give you an example. If you think about what happens during stagflation, I just described it, think about auto maintenance, right? Because during normal times of high growth, low inflation, and a robust middle-class demand, people tend to own their cars for a shorter period of time. But conversely, during stagflation, what you tend to see is the average ownership period for a car goes out much, much longer. And of course, what happens as cars get older, they consume more auto maintenance, right? And so it's kind of counterintuitive, but during stagflation and poor economic growth, you might find the auto maintenance sector experiences growth at a multiple of GDP, like it grows much more quickly. So there's an example, and it's an area that we invest a lot of capital into. We're consolidating a bunch of companies in the automotive maintenance sector. Another one that you might find in Canada experiences growth even though the overall conditions in the economy are stagflationary is the building products distribution sector. It's very fragmented. And of course, Canada has a 3 million home housing shortfall. And so if you look out over the next 10 years, the growth rate in the building products distribution space, manufacturing and distribution, we invest just in the distribution space, is going to grow at 5% a year. So that's like 2 or 3 times faster than the overall economy is going to grow. So even though the economy is not in a great condition in aggregate, like these 1 or 2 sectors will experience very rapid growth. Another one that's more of a holistic thing to invest in is farmland, because Canadian farmland, our biggest export market is in the United States. It's the Middle East and Asia. So first of all, you're not really subject to those tariff risks. But farmland, of course, hedges recessions really well because the demand for food is inelastic. During a recession, people don't don't change their food consumption behavior, right? So it hedges recessions really well, and it hedges inflation really well because it's a non-depreciating real asset. And so farmland loves stagflation, perversely. During the 1970s, we had very pronounced stagflation in the West, and farmland in Canada went up 300% in real terms, at inflation-adjusted returns. It went up 500% in nominal terms. So farmland is an asset that really flourishes during inflation. And I would suggest those 2 others that I mentioned, even if Canada's stagflation problem gets worse, can still experience really quite robust growth. And so I don't want to leave, your listeners with sort of feeling of doom. the tariffs look like they're going to get implemented and, make Canada's stagflation problem worse. But stagflation really is just, if you want to think about it differently, is that different parts of the economy grow as opposed to the parts of the economy that grew in the last 20 years, where we had low inflation and high growth. As those conditions change, it causes rapid growth in other areas of the economy. And I mentioned two. And so it's not all universally bad. I mean, it's not good for Canada on an aggregate basis, but certainly you might be able to find pockets of really, really pronounced, robust growth. And we certainly believe that.
That was Stephen Johnston, Director of Omnigen's Asset Management. Stephen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks. It was good to be on again.
When it comes to our neighbors to the south, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has outlined a slightly different plan by suggesting Canadian leaders should be talking to American workers. He explains how Americans would be impacted by the U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods.
We need a prime minister who can make the case to our economic allies on the ground in America. We should go to the American workers in the Midwest and their union and business leaders and say, how many jobs are you prepared to lose by hitting Canadian energy with tariffs, energy that we sell to America at discounts that create six-figure jobs for American workers? How many of those people will go out of work? How many of those hard hats will be laid down and boots will be unfilled because Americans will lose jobs due to that self-harm?
Some weeks have passed since Donald Trump proposed to annex Canada as the 51st state of the United States. What at first sounded like a bad joke has gained strength. Our BCN's Heidi Echeverria went to the streets to talk to experts and Canadians about this.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like. And it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
This idea continues to generate controversy among Canadians. But what is the opinion of experts in the economic area of Lethbridge on the matter? The CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge, Trevor Lewington, talk about this issue.
I mean, clearly it started out that most people thought Trump was joking. As he continues to talk about it, more and more people are starting to take this very seriously. At the end of the day, I think Canadians are very proud to be Canadians. When we've looked at polls, there's been polls conducted since Trump started making these comments, and only about 12 to 15% of Canadians actually support becoming a part of the United States. 25% tariff on everything we export to the US is going to do some serious financial damage to the Canadian economy, and in the next few months, I think it could be very painful. But the solution isn't necessarily just better integration with the US. Canada is a relatively small population and a relatively small economy when compared to the US. So even if we were hypothetically to join the US, we would have less standing and less clout than most of the large US states, California and Texas, for example. So simply joining the US is not a solution. However, we can look at reducing trade barriers within our own country, as well as improving our relationship with other countries that we do business with, like Europe and Asia. The real concern is the short-term damage to the economy and the maneuvering. Trump has been very clear. He plans to use what he calls economic force or economic coercion to make Canadians think twice about, maintaining the sovereignty of our country. And I think we should be prepared for a very unstable economy and changes in our fluctuation, and there's real risk in the next few months as these threats come to be reality. Alberta, I think, is very different than the rest of Canada for a couple of reasons. First, it's important to remember that 90% of our exports going out of Alberta go to the US. The United States is our single biggest customer. So there's no question Alberta has a very strong economic integration. And we also have very strong ties with the states that are to our south. We have very strong partnerships and trade relationships with Montana. We have a very strong connection with Utah. So I think make it perhaps a little bit different than the rest of the country.
We also talked with Canadians about this proposal, and this is what they had to say.
I think I speak for a lot of Albertans that would probably rather belong to the States than have to put up with another 5 years of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals.
He was very disrespectful to Canada. If it was to happen, I'd worry about healthcare because they do seem to have lots of issues with healthcare. I think our government needs to step up and stand up for ourselves and find some other areas that we can work with other countries as well, not just to rely on the U.S.
As criticisms of Trump's proposal continues to grow, the idea of annexing Canada as the 51st state of the United States is met with skepticism among Canadians. Beyond the initial reactions, the proposal raises questions about the intentions behind it and the potential impact it could have on relations between both countries once Trump assumes the presidency of the United States again. For Brit City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
The sentencing hearing for Freedom Convoy organizer Pat King is underway, but a decision is still weeks away, according to the presiding judge. In November, Superior Court Justice Charles Hackland in Ottawa found King guilty on 5 counts, including mischief and disobeying a court order. He was found not guilty on 3 counts of intimidation and 1 of obstructing police. King could be facing as much as 10 years in prison, and the Crown is pushing for significant time behind bars. His defense wants the sentence limited to time served and probation. Education support workers have begun job action in Edmonton, seeking better wages from 2 public school divisions. The Canadian Union of Public Employees says some 3,000 staff with the Edmonton Public School Board and Sturgeon Public School Division are off the job. Just north of the provincial capital, another 200 workers are taking rotating strike action and working to rule. The school support workers on strike include educational assistants, cafeteria workers, and administration staff. After the break, we bring you a story that's going to make you want to groove in your seat. Don't go away. Everything is ready for the night of dancing with rock, funk, and hip-hop. The dance program of the Lethbridge Collegiate Institute Arts Academy is ready to present the Lean In Show. Our BCN's Heidi Echavarria was on the preparation side for what is already a spectacular show.
With spectacular dances that will make you vibrate and even feel younger, students from Lethbridge Collegiate Institute prepare for the Lean In Show. Jordan Olsen and Haley Van Ryan, co-directors of the LCI Arts Academy Dance, give us the details for this fabulous show.
It is an hour-and-a-half show. It has rock and roll, it has funk and hip-hop. Yeah, hip-hop. It has hip-hop. And we're bringing in an amazing DJ from Calgary named DJ Catfish the Wizard that's going to open the show and get everyone like super hype. It's like a really hype show this year. Like we went for full entertainment value. It's at the Yates, and you can get tickets through the Yates box office or the lethbridge.com website. Tickets are $25.
The kids have made this space their home in the high school, and it brings a nice sense of community and where they can really belong and where they might not fit in other places.
It's going to be amazing. Everybody in the program is so talented, and every year the show just keeps progressively getting better. So expect nothing but great things from the program this year.
It's funk, pop, and rock. It's a bunch of cool different varieties of dance. We get them from a bunch of cool choreographers that come from all over and teach us. Just fun, like it's a fun hobby to pick up. Like I never thought I could dance, but then I met Jordan, tried it out, and then I just loved it, and I've been here ever since. Try it out, join dance, why not?
For Brit City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
Junior College, Lethbridge Community College, Lethbridge College, and now Lethbridge Polytechnic. Those have been the different names assigned to the post-secondary school since it opened its doors in 1957. Last year, for the first time in 67 years, the institution made the change from college to polytechnic. But what is the difference between the two titles? BCN's Heidi Echavarria is back and asked this very question to the president and CEO of Lethbridge Polytechnic, Brad Donaldson, and this is what he said.
Colleges tend to have more broad-based programming, where ours is very job and applied research focused. Foundational learning is more of a college aspect, as is the regional stewardship, meaning that they have responsibility for the region. The programs we have here are designed to help people either start their career or move further in their career. So it's very skill and job focused. The other aspect of a polytechnic is applied research. And applied research is research that's helping to solve a problem that helps industry or commerce today. So, for example, we have a lot of work being done on irrigation, policing, virtual reality. The combination of programming and applied research, where the applied research can also be used to help instruct students on real world, what's happening today, define what a polytechnic is. When we realized who we were, we went to the government and said, please let's move our designation from college to polytechnic, recognizing the space that we occupy in the post-secondary.
Lethbridge Polytechnic offers more than 60 career training certificates and diploma programs, applied degrees, and apprenticeships. Residents of Lethbridge are tuning into a new restaurant boasting some of the most well-known Texas barbecue from the United States. Dickey's Barbecue Pit opened its newest location on Mayor McGrath Drive on Wednesday. This marks the 12th location in Alberta after expanding into Canada in 2022. Following the closure of southern Alberta's famed Hickory Street last year, workers with Dickey's say residents are excited to try out a new twist on what has been missing in this city.
Dickey's is very new to Canada, so it's not only just exciting to Lethbridge, it's exciting everywhere. We have some of the best sides. Our mac and cheese is great. I know lots of people in Lethbridge really want a good Texan barbecue, so this is the perfect spot. Everything's very fresh, everything's very yummy. Also, not being such like a fast food place and more of like a real food is very comforting to the stomach, so yeah, that's why people love it so much.
The restaurant's grand opening will be set for a later date, but workers at Dickey's say watch out for next Saturday. Many people who live in southern Alberta are unaware what a rich history the sport of basketball has in our region. Up next, a basketball referee shares stories that he has chronicled from the past. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.